and welcome to Monday Night and Let's Talk About It with Laura Paul, where our special guests tell us their stories and we talk about gospel and God. I want you to remember that you can also listen on the Praise app. You can go to YouTube Live, Facebook Live, or you can listen on praise963.com all over the world. I want to thank you for tuning in tonight, and I want to thank Praise Radio for having programs like this. I also want to thank my super supporter, David's Abbey Carpet and Floors. They've got locations in Knoxville, Pigeon Forge, and Farragut too, and they are talking about LVP. It's here to stay. That's a luxury vinyl plank. You can see it at any of the stores. We'll be talking more about them a little bit later in the program. Also, I want to thank my media producer, Dan Bell, and my super social media producer, and that's Shelby Hicks. I want to talk to you about this gentleman sitting next to me. He is from Maryville, a true East Tennessean. Welcome to Let's Talk About It, pastor of 2 church locations with 150 volunteers, Pastor Marquiel Baker. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me, Laura. I appreciate it so much. And yeah, I'm a family ministry pastor at Revolution Church in Maryville. We have 2 locations, one right outside of Maryville and then one on 411 right outside of Greenback, actually. And so I've been a family ministry pastor there for couple of years, children's pastor for 10 years there, and God has done amazing things, and I've got to see that church grow and been blessed to be a part of it.
I want you to get a little closer in to me and look right there in the camera, so give everybody a wave that's watching live on Facebook and eventually YouTube as well.
Hi, how's everybody doing?
And I ran into your story because God is a connector of people to fulfill his purpose. So I had a gentleman named Steve on the air with me a few weeks ago telling his story, and afterward in the parking lot he told me your story. And it starts with a very young boy. Do you remember what age?
I was right at 10, almost 11 years old at that time. So.
And a pair of tennis shoes with holes in them.
Yeah.
Why don't you take the story from there?
All right, we'll do. Well, the young boy at 10 and a half years old with tennis shoes and holes in them was me. I was in foster care at the moment when I was young, born to a single mother here in Knoxville, Tennessee, Western Heights, a pretty rough area. It can be at some times, and ran the streets for a long time until my mother took us to a homeless shelter when we were. I had 2 sisters at the time, and it's me and my 2 sisters, and we were taken to this homeless shelter, and my mother got married while we were there, and so that ended up this whole momentum of me going into foster care at this moment.
So put it into perspective for our listeners and viewers. What year was this?
That would be 95, 96, around there. So
okay.
Yeah.
So you were homeless.
Mm-hmm.
How did you remember how you ended up homeless?
Yeah. So like I said, I was born to a single mother. We would many times move around because she wouldn't be able to afford rent, and we would end up in different homes at many different times, and until she started dating a guy that she fell in love with, and he decided to move us out to Decatur, Tennessee, which is a hole in the wall if you know where Decatur is. I had friends who had no running water. That's like from inner city Knoxville to this little hole in the wall of Decatur. But we ended up having to leave that place because of rent and not being able to afford rent. And so my mother and her boyfriend moved us back here to Knoxville, but there was no home for us to go to. And we ended up sleeping in cars, sleeping in other people's homes and stuff for a few months. And then ended up in a homeless shelter after that. Once my mom finally got rid of her pride to take us to a shelter. So.
And so it was from the shelter that you were placed into foster care?
Yes.
Although she was married,
Mhm.
and so there's a husband and wife scenario there.
Yes.
But neither one of them could find jobs.
So that's actually what the whole foster care started with, was a job. So when we moved into the shelter, my mother and her boyfriend were not married, and for him to come to the shelter and stay with us, they had to get married. And so they got married, and also for him to stay in the shelter, he had to have a job. And he ended up going to get a job, but the first day that he showed up to that job, he actually didn't go to that job. He was a drunk and would drink a lot. And
So
he
there's
went
an
out.
addiction involved with the
Yes.
situation.
Yes, and so he went out and got drunk the whole day. And I remember going to bed that night. My mother worried sick because she hadn't heard from her husband all day, and being woken up late in the night. It was probably 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, with my mother just shaking me and my sister. My oldest sister actually was living with some relatives at the time, but me and my other sister, my mother was waking us up, telling us to grab our stuff. We were having to pack our stuff in garbage bags and all. And I come down to the lobby to see what's actually happening, and it's my stepfather making a scene, trying to get into the shelter. The cops were called, all those things. And my mother was given an ultimatum that night, and she was told that you can stay here with your children, and everything will be fine, or that you can go with your husband and your kids will be taken from you. And my mother at that time actually chose to go with her husband. And here I am at 10 years old, 10 and a
How
half
old were your
years.
sisters?
My sister was 11, so she's a year older than me. And then my oldest sister, she was 12, because she was with relatives, she wasn't really affected by this decision.
Literally stair step, but the relatives couldn't take all three of you, apparently.
Well, and that's what else comes into play. There was a lot of, relatives really didn't want to take me and my other sister because we had the last name of a black man. And my oldest sister was married or born outside of wedlock, and she had carried my biological father's last name. And so there was some racism involved there. But eventually...
So your oldest sister was born Caucasian?
No, she's mixed, just like us. Same father. She just held the maiden name of my family and not my biological father.
Now, isn't the formal name that we use now is multiracial?
Yes.
And so you were all three multiracial, but you had the last name of your biological father, and that was a conflict.
Yes, it was, yeah.
Now, how was that a racial conflict?
My mother, when she married my father, it was against the will of her family, and they really, pushed her out of the family when she came home and said that she was going to marry him, because he was black, and she's coming from a white family, Caucasian family,
Mm-hmm.
and so it was around the time that wasn't looked on as being acceptable and all, and so that's why that's the case. And when my sister was born before they were married, because she held their last name, and we could easily pass off as being white or being multiracial, or many people think I'm Hispanic sometimes.
I was going to go for Hispanic, or you just got a really good suntan this summer.
My daughter plays softball, so I'm in the sun.
Sun all the time.
So.
And so you are going to foster care. How is that presented to you at the age of 10? And how does that separation go? I mean, put us in the shoes of a 10-year-old if you can.
Well, it's really not presented to you at the age of 10. Here you are, 1 minute with your mother, and then the very next second, when she decides, I'm going to go with my husband, being separated from her. I can remember that whole night as if I was still there. They took me into the cafeteria. They got us a couple pieces of cold chicken from the previous night's meal, and I, like the sliminess of it, I can remember it like vividly. And them telling us that, they're going to find a place for us, and you don't know what you're going to end up doing. And I can also remember it's a rainy night that night. I'm being put in the back of the police cruiser with my sister, And I laid my head against the window of that police cruiser, against that cold window, and just watching those raindrops hit the window and them just scattering out to different places. You've seen how raindrops do on a window. They go in different directions. There's no rhyme or reason. And little did I know that was going to be my life for several years, that I'm going to be scattered all over the place and being put into foster care. We ended up going to a children's home that's here locally in Knoxville, and that's our first stop. And then family started taking us in here and there, but I was an angry kid. Like my mother deciding to stay with her husband, that made me angry, but also raised on the streets running around Knoxville. As me being the only male in my family, my oldest sister would always tell me that I had to earn my respect, and the way I was going to do that was fighting and all that. And I was getting pretty thick into it.
So I'm going to say what is pretty much a typical story in this situation, of feeling a great deal of resentment, thus the anger, and looking for respect. And from the shows that I've done, I have been educated that looking for respect is found in gangs and running the streets. When you don't feel like you have a secure home base of love, affection, respect, and also discipline.
Yes. Yep.
Because even gangs require discipline. Did you end up in a gang, or
I was close to it, and that's
you were hanging out with gang members?
I was,
then?
yeah. In fact, by fourth grade, I remember me and a buddy named Ricky. We
fourth grade.
Yeah,
so young.
We were talking about we were going to join the gang and all, and I could actually remember I brought the rag home that I was going to tell, which a rag is the colors of the gang. I brought that home to tell my oldest sister, like, hey, I'm going to join a gang, and I'm thinking she'd be proud of me. But
it was cool.
Yeah,
you were a tough guy.
Yes, yeah. And so
in the fourth grade.
Yes. Yeah. And so she actually took that rag because it was the wrong colors. Because she was already, dating a guy that was in gang and stuff and all that. And it was the wrong colors, and I chose the wrong colors. She threw that rag down and stomped on it and said, now you take that back and you're not joining that gang. And so this is like the lifestyle I'm being grown up in.
So your sister preferred that you join the gang of the one that her boyfriend was in?
Yes.
Oh, so you had friends in the wrong group.
Yes.
Now, where is this all happening?
It's just all over in Knoxville. Like I said, I've moved around in several different places. That story actually happened when I was living at my grandmother's in foster care, but there was a time before I got into foster care that I was about to go into gang. And before I moved to Decatur, Tennessee, then this is where a God moment happened in my life. I was on the front porch, living on Cherry Street here in Knoxville, on the front porch of my house, and my sister had a boyfriend, and he was a part of a gang, and he's sitting there with me, and she's telling him that, hey, my brother's interested in this and thinks it would be a good idea. He comes up to me and he hands me a gun. Here I am. I'm probably 9 years old at this moment, and hands me a gun and tells me that this is how you're going to live your life. Are you ready to live it? And I said yes. And so here I am getting initiated into this gang. But just a week or so later, that's when we had to move out of our house there on Cherry Street because my mother couldn't afford the rent, and we ended up in Decatur, Tennessee. And so I went from this inner city, almost joining a gang, to going to a hole in the wall. There is nothing in Decatur. And I know, looking back on my life, that was God taking me out of that before I got too involved in it.
But am I not tracking with you in the right direction, that it came full circle back to you in foster care and now approaching joining a gang at this point?
Yes, yeah. And so just about a year later, after being in foster care, my grandmother takes me in, and that's where the tennis shoes actually come into play as well. My grandmother takes me in, and I'm getting involved in school and getting plugged in there. Get a friend, and me and him, we decide, hey, let's join a gang, let's do this. And so, but I didn't last long at my grandmother's because I'm angry, I'm resentful, I get into multiple fights. I get kicked out of schools left and right as a kid. And my grandmother was like, I can't handle him, I can't control him. And so I get moved out of that place. And again, I think that's another God moment that God is like, no, we're moving you on.
Hindsight's 20/20
Yeah.
to see when you didn't know God,
Yeah.
but God knew you.
Yes, yeah. But yeah, and the shoes is also full circle. In fact, my whole life is a full circle, but the shoes is a full circle because I can remember coming to my grandmother's for the first time, and the only pair of shoes I had were these gray Velcro shoes. And I can still hear those Velcro straps, strap it on and strap it off. And I also, does this back in the day that you had the white tube socks with the line around the top, And so here I am going to school with these gray Velcro shoes and a hole in the top. And my big toe is sticking out, and it's only white Velcro or these white socks. And so you can clearly see my big toe. And I'm so embarrassed to go to school that day. I can remember going into the gym because, of course, my first day is an assembly day where everybody is gathered. And I'm thinking, okay, now everybody's going to see my shoes. And I go into this gym, and my class is sitting on the gym floor, crisscross applesauce, back in elementary days. And I'm standing there being introduced to my teacher by the principal. And all I'm thinking is these kids are sitting on the floor, and all they're looking at is my
Big
feet.
toe.
Yeah, my big toe right there. And I could not wait for when my teacher told me I could sit down and crisscross applesauce. But now I work at a church. I'm blessed to serve at a church where every year we have an event called Helping Hands, and we give out free shoes to students.
So now we go back to the fourth grade, and the time that you were with your grandmother, and she couldn't handle you. And again, this is a pair of tennis shoes, but not the Velcro, but you've got holes in your shoes. And the church that you're speaking of is doing what?
And the church that I'm speaking of, they're giving out free shoes, and so I'm blessed to be able to look at families and say, I understand the embarrassment of not being able to provide, or also the embarrassment of the children of going to school, and how much just getting a pair of new shoes, and these are name brand shoes, Nike, Adidas, like all those.
So say the name of the church again.
So it's
giving it out.
It's a
giving out
Real
shoes.
Revolution Church. Every year.
And they were giving these out. And at that time, you were in the fourth grade, and this was the second round of having holes in your shoes. And at that point, you're of an age where you could get bullied.
Yeah.
And so you got new shoes before you started school?
No, so Real Revolution Church didn't exist then, and so that's like I didn't have that opportunity. That's what I mean by this is a full circle moment. Is now I get the opportunity to give it to kids, even though when I was a kid I didn't have that opportunity. So Real Revolution Church didn't exist then, and that's why I believe God uses my story to say, hey, I've been through this as a kid. And I know and I understand the embarrassment that kids have, and I want to be able to help them and be able to bless them. So the church, I didn't have a church. My grandmother didn't go to church, and my family
At
didn't go to
what
church.
point, and how old were you when you first heard about Jesus and the love he had for you?
So I got to hear about Jesus when I was probably 8 years old. There was a gentleman named Mike Perez, and he's one of my unsung heroes. Like I love Mike and Kim Perez, the family. He would come into our neighborhood. He actually lived in our neighborhood, Big Oak Apartments off of Middlebrook Pike in Knoxville. And he would take a van to the church on Wednesday nights and Sunday mornings. And every now and then I would jump into the van and go on Wednesday nights. And I got to hear about Jesus then. I got to go to some vacation Bible schools around the area too then. So I got some sprinkling of Jesus, but my family was not a church-going family, and so I really didn't know Jesus until when I'm in foster care. One of the foster homes is Mike and Kim Perez. They take my sister in because they remember us from taking us to church. They take my sister in, and then they take me in after they take my sister in. And so we're going to church every Sunday and every Wednesday night.
How old were you at this point?
Do what?
How old were you at this point?
I was still in 5th grade, so right at almost 11 years old. So from the time I was 10 to 11, I lived in probably 8 different foster homes or group homes throughout my life, and that's how much I jumped around throughout. And so that one year, I went through several different homes, but yeah, and what's beautiful and amazing about Mike and Kim Perez, they took me in, and they had a son my age, and of course, like every other stop, I got into fights at the school. I got kicked out of our school multiple times, but I also started fighting their son Josh, and they were very patient with me. They took their time to try to invest in me, but it got to a point where they couldn't handle me anymore, along with their kids. They had younger kids as well and stuff. But before they gave up on me, or I won't even say gave up on me, I think they made the right choice because it was the best choice for their family. But before they decided to disrupt me from that home, they took me to a church, and their church was Park West Church of God. It's local here in Knoxville, Middlebrook Pike. And they took me there for a counseling session with one of the associate pastors. And I wish I could remember his name. I got to a point where I stopped trying to remember names because I moved around so often that even today it still affects me. I have to say your name multiple times before I finally get it. But they took me to this counseling session, and they sat me down with him. And I don't remember anything from this conversation except for the end of the conversation. We could have been there an hour. I don't remember the whole length of it. But I turned to this pastor and I asked him, I said, if God loves me, like you said, he does. If he sent his son, Jesus, to die for me, and all these things that you have told me, then why am I living this life of hell? And here I am at almost 11 years old, saying, being just blunt with this pastor, why am I having to go through this? I didn't choose the mother that I was born to. I didn't choose the family that I was born into. I didn't choose to be homeless. I didn't choose the stepfather that my mother married. I didn't choose all these things.
And you didn't choose to be biracial.
No, I didn't choose any of those things, and God, like I was telling him, God chose those things for me. So why me? And that associate pastor looked at me and said these words, and these words have stayed with me for the rest of my life. He said, because one day...
Why don't you look closer into the camera and tell everybody what that pastor said?
He said, one day he will use your story to touch the lives of hundreds of other children and family. And that's what he does with me. As a family ministry pastor, like I said, my whole life is full circle from what God has brought me through. I had no family. I have a beautiful wife, been married 18 years now, have 5 beautiful children, 2 about to graduate high school. And I get to minister to families every single Sunday and minister to children and share with them the hope that God has for them, that Jesus has for them, no matter where they come from, no matter their skin color, no matter their wealth, no matter any of those details. God made them who they are because he has a plan in their life. And so I get to share that every single Sunday, and my whole life has been a blessing to be able to do that.
Where did you end up grounded? Where you said you were fighting with the son. Mm-hmm. You end up talking to the youth minister at Park West. Mm-hmm. But where did you end up grounded in a place where you were living?
So
what became solid?
So it took a while for that to happen. Like I said, Mike and Kim Perez's house was probably number 3 out of 8 that I stayed in. I lived at a children's home here in Knoxville, went to my grandmother's, went to Mike and Kim Perez's, went back to another group home in Knoxville, went to my aunt and uncle. My aunt and uncle, they gave up on me. There was a moment in my life that I just felt ostracized from everybody. I remember when I left my aunt and uncle's home. I was at school, and they told me, somebody came from the office and said, "Hey, don't get on the bus. Somebody will come and pick you up." And I stayed there afterwards, and I had to wait for about 15 minutes. Everybody's gone, and there's a complete stranger that shows up that I've never met this person before. They had all my stuff in garbage bags in the back of their car, and they told me that my aunt and uncle had disrupted me from their home, and I never got to see my aunt and uncle since then or after that moment. Unfortunately, they passed away, but I forgive them. I love them still, and I was never able to get back with them to go through that process. But yeah, so I had that. I went to another group home, went into multiple different homes. But the last placement I had that was a group home was John Tarleton here in Knoxville. And I got into a fight that one evening. And the fight all started over an argument. I had a girl that was arguing with me. And at this moment, I decided to turn away. I was like, I'm going to be a bigger man. And that's a lot for me. Like, I used to never turn from a fight, no matter who it was. And I didn't care who you were, what you looked like, none of those things. I was going to get my respect because I've seen men hit on women before and all those things. And so that wasn't something new to me. But I decided I'm going to be a bigger man. I'm going to turn away from this fight. And I decided to turn away. And then I had a big fro back then. You can imagine me in a fro. But I turned away, and she grabs my hair. And the first instinct is to swing.
Oh, yeah.
And I turned around, and I hit this young girl, and I hit her hard. And that's all I can remember. Them jumping me, taking me back to my room, and I don't know how bad it was because I didn't get to see the aftermath. But they told me that night, like, you're done. Like, you're going to juvenile. We're going to call. We're going to fill out a report. And if you know where John Tarleton is, it actually sits on top of a hill right above Knoxville Juvenile Detention Center. And so, I mean, they could have came and got me that night. But for the first time ever, I fell to my knees that night in my room by myself. I had never prayed to God before. Never thought about praying to God before. Like I said, I've had some moments, a sprinkling of Jesus here and there throughout my life, but never like this solid moment of who God is. I'm 12 years old at this time, so almost a year and a half in this.
You've lived a lot of life by the age of 12.
Yeah, and I fall on my knees next to my bed,
Okay.
and I remember the prayer like I said it yesterday. And I looked at God.
Tell us.
I said, God, if you are real and you love me like I've been told, take this situation from me and I will follow you for the rest of my life. And the very next day, I meet my parents who would eventually adopt me. I meet Donnie Wynn Baker, who would eventually adopt me after a few years.
So the very next day, so you did not end up in juvie.
I did not, and that's another part of the crazy story is
God was there yet again.
Yeah, he was.
He had an eye on you. He had a purpose for your life.
He did, and I remember going into the office that morning. They're telling me that somebody's going to come pick me up. They're not giving me much detail about somebody coming to pick me up, and I come in this complete stranger, and her name is Nikki. She was a case worker.
More in the scene here.
Okay, sorry. Her name was Nikki, and she was a case worker for Omni Visions, but I didn't know this about her at the time. She comes and picks me up, and I'm thinking she's the one that's going to take me down to juvenile and do the intake and stuff. I'm used to meeting strangers all the time that's going to do intake processes and all. So we go down the hill, and in fact, I actually took my daughter to this road just last week. But we go down the hill from John Tarleton, and if you take a right you're going to juvenile detention center.
Mm-hmm.
But instead of taking a right, she took a left, and she drove to Alcoa. I can remember thinking, this lady doesn't know where she's going. I'm not going to ask anything. But on the drive, she was telling me that she's going to take me to one last family that saw my files, and they want to see if we're going to be compatible.
That's a miracle.
Yeah.
This family saw your files, and you just shared with everyone what your files look like.
Yeah, it's awful. Yeah.
And which is why I was so glad you were willing to share your story with the listeners, because it is such a strong story of how miracles can happen in a life. And it's the little poignant times along the way that you don't pay any attention to, but God was there when you look back on it. I'm going to take just a moment. You're listening to Praise 96.3. My special guest tonight has gone from holes in a tennis shoe and ready to join a gang to becoming a pastor and working in 2 churches and 150 volunteers, and quite a story. And we're right at the point of where a major change is about to happen. I want to take a moment to say thank you for listening, and my special guest is Marquiel. I always want to say Marquiel, and it's Marquiel.
Marquiel, like a bird.
And we're not going to tell anybody how it's spelled. Marquiel Baker. Thank you so much for being here. I just call you Marquiel, and or Pastor Marquiel. I guess that's what the kids call you.
They do.
Pastor Mark. Anyway, what a turning point that all these things that happen in your life. So many foster care locations, so much anger and resentment of how you ended up there to begin with. A biracial kid, not your fault. Poverty, not your fault, just born into all of it. And finally, a family looks at your record, which is hideous. I'm just going to say it, your record. Come on, Mark. Well, it's hideous.
It's not the most beautiful thing.
You know, no family in their right mind would take you in if it weren't for God, and you had gone on your knees and asked God for help.
Yeah.
So take it from there. They come to get you.
Yeah. So they
Are you thinking this is just another family and it's going to be the continuation of the same, or are you thinking hopeful thoughts that maybe God heard your prayer?
Well, at first I thought it was just another family, but I was, thinking, God, that I'm not going to juvenile at this moment, so I'm going to try this out,
And the fact that they were headed toward Alcoa, which you thought they were going the wrong way to begin with,
right.
That was something new.
Yeah. And so Nikki gets me to the house in Alcoa, and we pull up. I go into the home, sit down with the family. They have 3 kids themselves, and it's a biracial family as well. And so one of the son is my age. We're right at the same age as well. And I can remember the first thing that Don told me. He says, "My name's Don Baker, and we are the Bakers, and we saw your file, and we really wanted to get to know you and get to meet you." But then he also says, "I'm a pastor, though." And at this moment, when he shares that he's a pastor with me,
chills. I'm getting chills.
Yeah.
I'm right now hearing your story.
Yeah, I knew it was God. I knew it was God. I didn't share with them at this time that I prayed for the first time ever, but I knew at that moment that God was real.
I want to point out that the timing, you went on your knees and asked for help, and it was the next day.
Yeah.
The very next day you met the Bakers.
Yes. Yep. It's amazing. God is just, and like I said, I look back on my life and I see moments like that time that living on Cherry Street, God was taking me out from there. I remember times like the moment that he moved me out of my grandmother's house when I started to get involved with this gang stuff. I remember times where
it could have been so much worse if you had been involved with the gang.
Yeah.
and you were pulled out of it at the 11 3/4 hour.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
God will show up at the 11 3/4 hour.
He will. He will. And so there's so many different moments I could probably go over that God had just shown up and moved me, or something else would happen. And but that moment right then was just the accumulation of
So
all
now
that
that you're
happened.
with the Bakers, you are in a family that understands a lot,
Mhm.
and you are about to learn a lot about Jesus.
Yes. Yes.
So tell us the rest of the story.
And so one thing that I had to learn was forgiveness. Forgiveness for what was done against me, but also forgiveness of myself. That was a huge journey of mine. But the first time I got into a fight with my parents, the Bakers, I got into a fight at school, at Alcoa Middle School, and it was actually with their son. And so I get into this fight with Colton, he's my brother, and I come home, and I remember them taking me to the room, and I'm sitting there thinking, what are they going to try to, whip me or something? They can't do that. I'm in DCS. That's against the rules. It's against the law, but they take me to the room, and Gwen, my mother, she looks at me, and she, with those deep brown eyes, that she's got deep dark eyes, and I remember looking at her, and I knew she was sincere because of the way she looked at me and she talked to me, and she said, "You can do everything. You can do whatever you want, but we're not going to stop loving you. You can fight until hell freezes over. You can fight for the rest of your life. We're going to love you, and you're going to be a part of this family, no matter what happens." And this is the first time that I felt
Unconditional love.
yes. Everybody else had kept kicking me out, throwing me out. People my whole life, growing up, told me I would either end up in prison and dead or on drugs before I was even 18 years old, which I couldn't believe it.
Can I point out the difference? Because I think I've got it. Tell me if I'm right or wrong. For the first time in your life, after being in all of these different homes, someone is being Christ-like
Yes.
toward you, as Christ shows us unconditional love and forgiveness. She was showing you what Christ is like and giving you unconditional love
Yes. Yeah.
and forgiveness.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is very early on in me living with them, and that right there changed so much in my life. And I put them through a lot throughout my years when they took me in. They fostered me for a few years, and then finally the adoption went through. And I put them through a lot. I fought and fought. And this whole
Do you
sanctification
think
process.
it was testing them? I mean, were you testing them along the way?
I was. I wanted to see how true those words were. Because I've been told something similar. My own mother said she loved me more than the world.
And you had a false beginning, a false start on what love was really all about.
Yeah.
God's love.
Yes.
When did you decide to receive Jesus as your Lord and Savior?
I go back to that when I was 12 years old, the first time I hit my knees. I told God, I'll follow you for the rest of my life. And at that moment, I started this relationship with God. Started going to church every Sunday with the family, that my family that I was raised with, and started diving into the Word and all. Now, the sanctification process was a long one. My scripture that I hang on to is 2 Corinthians 5:17, that any man who comes to Christ, behold, is a new creature. All old things are passed away, and everything is made new. And I had to learn that about myself, that the moment that I told God I was going to be with Him, the moment He took me in at 12 years old, He had to show me that I was no longer the kid that that came to my parents. I was this new creation. I was this new being, and He was making me into this new being by me living out with Him in the Word. And so I would say that because I started when I was 16, I can remember going to my dad and saying, I think that I'm being called into ministry one day. I didn't know what that looked like. And so that started off as this urge and this calling to want to share my story with other people and to share what God has done in my life at an early age. And then that kept on going and going throughout my whole life. And so I that moment I fell to my knees to God. It's like, God, just take me. I'm willing to give it all to you.
I think you just shared one of the most important things of your entire story, and that is the moment you fell to your knees, the next day the family came to get you. But it was a process of sanctification. As you learned about God, you believe you received God that night into your life. But there was more to learn about receiving God, becoming sanctified with God, becoming His child. And you admitted that you continued to fight and go through a growing process of not being, let's say, the best son. And that just points out that just because you come to Jesus does not mean that all the old habits just go away like that.
Yeah.
It's a process. It's a journey. And I just really feel like someone is listening tonight that is hearing what we're saying, and they're kind of ready to throw in the towel because they received Christ, but they don't feel like there's changes in their life. It takes time. But God has His finger on you the moment that you gave your heart to Him, and the moment that you turned away and said you have intention, serious intention to turn away from your sins. But we are a fallen people.
We are,
and sin is abundant. The enemy, the minute you turn toward Christ, is going to try to get you to sin, to hold on to the old habits, and bring something your way that causes you maybe a friend from your past, something that's going to cause you want to pursue old habits. So it doesn't all go away immediately, does it?
No, it doesn't.
Even though you are pursuing God
Yes.
at the same time.
Yeah, you're killing the old flesh constantly. I always tell people that I wish this flesh would be so easy to kill every single day. Paul says it in Scripture that I daily have to kill my flesh. That's the hardest thing to do every single day. And I want to be with God so bad because it's so hard to kill it every day, right? I want to be in that glory already, but I look at my life and this has been a 29-year process. I'm 41 now, and I am nowhere close to that 12-year-old today, that who I am today as a father. When I first had my son, today's my son's birthday. We were just talking about that before we went on. 17 years ago, he made me a father, and I'm a lot better father today than I was
17 years
ago. But that was because God has put people in my life to help grow me and stretch me. My own kids have helped grow me and stretch me.
And if your children are going to university and proceeding with God because you started them that way and gave them a solid foundation of a home, then you are proving that you can break old cycles.
You can, yeah. And that's
with God's help.
With God's help, yes. And that's what God is about. He's a God of redemption, right? When we finally come to Him, He says, "Come to me and confess your sins, and I will make you a new being," right? So when I come to Him confessing my faults, that I need Him, that I can't do this on my own, He has redeemed me. He has given me. And that's why I say my life is a full circle, because I went from not having a family to now I have a beautiful family with 5 children, to with nephews, nieces, my brothers. They have children. My brother just had another child. That's his 5th one. So my grandparents, I got this huge family now that we get together for family gatherings and all, and and God restored all that to me when I started off with nothing, and that's what the beauty of God. and He's able to do that, right? So.
Marco, part of the reason I wanted to have you on the program in this specific timing that God allowed is because last week I started a series with Janie Whaley, who is from the Knoxville International Network, and they work with 45 churches, and we're encouraging more churches to get involved with them because we've got 45,000 internationals here in Knoxville and surrounding area. We also have numerous refugees, and I really want to encourage people to get involved in helping, figure out where you can find your niche in Knoxville surrounding area, wherever your community area is that works with internationals and refugees, because your story is about being a refugee in your own hometown where you were born.
Yeah.
So we put labels on things. We put labels on internationals. We put labels on refugees. We put labels on color, like you said, biracial, but am I black? Am I white? Am I brown? Am I tan? We tend to stand in judgment, and God's the only one that should stand in judgment. We are meant to be servants.
Yeah.
Serving God in whatever way we can,
Yeah.
and helping wherever we can. And so would you help me to encourage the listeners and the viewers, explain to them what it means to you to have had help, because as many places as you live, and here's the concern, that God put this whole thing on my heart, and it is so huge, and that is all of these internationals and refugees are going to end up being a refugee like you were here, born here, in that they're going to get lost in the system, and it's going to be a long, long process before they can let go of the resentment, the anger, and find the solid rock, Jesus.
And that is on us as a church to be Jesus here on earth, right? We are called, like Christian means Christ-like. You know, I need to show Christ-likeness throughout how I live. And I think about the parable of the Good Samaritan, you know, and you have Jesus being asked, like, who was a neighbor by a Pharisee, a teacher of the law, and Jesus like, well, you have 3 men. Like, you have a man who's walking down the road. He's jumped and mugged and beaten and left to die, right? And then you have a priest from the church walk down the road and see this man who needs help, this Jewish man who needs help, and instead he decides to cross the road and walk on the other side. Then you have a teacher of the law that comes down and sees this person in need, and they decide to walk on the other side. But then you have a Samaritan who is considered to be unclean to Jews, and somebody that you don't associate with. But he sees this man who would probably be like treat him bad in return. But he sees this man and he picks him up and cares for his wounds and takes him to the hotel, and Jesus and then pays for his stay and cares for him. And Jesus asks, who was the neighbor in this situation? And the teacher of the law had to say it was the Samaritan who took care of him. And we are to do the same, no matter race, creed, color, none of those. Like, every person that God created is valuable in God's eyes. In fact, I actually just talked to my youngest son who turned 9 recently, and he was asking me, Dad, he likes to collect rocks, and so he's 9-year-old, loves collecting rocks, and he thinks everything's a ruby or a diamond. And so we were driving down the road, and he says, Dad, what's the most valuable thing on the earth? You know, we're in the universe. And we went from the earth to the universe, and just to see if I could give him an answer. And I told him, I was like, I was like, I don't know. And he started naming all, well, is it diamond? Is it this? And after a while, I thought about it. I said, you know, Cooper, the most valuable thing on this earth and in the entire universe is you and everybody else. Because God decided that you were so worth enough that he sent his son to die for you and every other human being. You're the only thing that he found worth enough to send his son to die for, that he loved you that much. That is who's valuable. Every person, even the one that has committed the worst of the worst sin that you can think of, God sent his son to die for. And so we got to think about that. Like, how do I treat individuals? It doesn't matter how they got brought here. It doesn't matter why they're here. We need to love on them while they're here and show them who God is. Because the hope is one day maybe they can go back home and share that same message.
I really believe that churches can make a difference if they just get involved, and it can start with one person going in, talking to their Sunday school class or their pastor, and by helping in the early stages, so many people will not end up with an entire family lost throughout the system. And I think that's the goal, is to keep families together with a little arm up, a little help, and a little sharing about Jesus. We all can make a difference. I'm going to ask you for last words right after I tell everybody about the super supporter of this program, and that's David's Abbey Carpet and Floors. You know, we are just right at football season starting, and they have a coach that's been on board for, well, since 1973. David Hayes is the owner of David's Abbey Carpet and Floors. They've got 3 locations, 3 generations of family, and they are all playing on the field. David is calling the plays from up in the booth. I think he's sitting and enjoying himself, relaxing in the booth these days. And his son is on the field, and I would say the 3 generations are on the sidelines to step in anytime that the teams of the 3 different stores need help. I had a team helping me when I was selecting and looking for things, and so you can too. Huge selection at each store. They carry everything from carpet, hardwoods, tile, the new product that everybody's talking about, which is the waterproof, kid-proof. I'm looking for the name of it again. I've got it here somewhere. And it is, let's see. Well, it's a kind of everything proof. You can go to their website and see it. I dropped the ball on that one, didn't I? And I've been talking about it. And so David's Abbey Carpet and Floors. Go ask them, what's that childproof stuff that Laura's talking about? I need some, and she needs to remember what the name is. I think that's a senior moment. They come and they go, and that's what live radio is all about. And thank you again for being a super supporter of this program. Thank you for being here with us and sharing your story. Any last words before I tell everybody what's going on next week for Labor Day?
Yeah, I just want to encourage your listeners, and you know, it wasn't just one person, like my family, the Bakers, who took me in, but it was so many different people that God put throughout my life that helped me. And I think of the scripture of when Paul says that I planted, Apollos watered, that we as a church, we have so many opportunities to help some individual in some way, whether it's a small way or a big way, that we can change the trajectory of the lives of people, whether that's in foster care or whether that's refugees that need help, whether that's somebody living on the street, homeless, or somebody coming off an addiction, or somebody just really lost in depression and darkness. When God puts those people in front of you, take that moment and know that God has given you everything. Because it says that we have the power of the Holy Spirit. As the moment that we're saved, we have the same power in us that that Jesus rose from the dead with. And so we have that power to be able to help somebody, and God will give us every tool in every way. So don't think that you don't have that. And so I'd say take that opportunity to be a light at that moment, and then that's all God asks us to do, is be obedient when He puts those people in our lives.
Amen, brother. I thank you again so much for being here. I'm going to tell everyone watching, it's luxury vinyl. That's what you're talking about at David's Heavy Carpet and Floors. I hope you'll join me for Labor Day. That's next Monday night. Can you believe we're into the summer go? And there is going to be a full concert, an hour-long concert for your Labor Day enjoyment. And it is going to be right here on Talk with Laura Paul from 7 to 8 p.m. Some super friends of mine. I just love them so much. They have such a wonderful ministry, a wonderful show full of laughter and love and songs about God. And of course, I'm talking about Misty, Jeff, and Dusty Trees. Jeff and Dusty are brothers. Misty is Jeff's wife. And so that's how they all end up being Teresa's in one group. The group's called Sunday Drive. I'm sure if you're local, you've probably seen them around here. And you'll have an hour-long concert. That's next Monday night, your Labor Day evening on Let's Talk About It right here on your Praise 96.3. Now go talk to Jesus, and then tomorrow, go out and tell somebody about your Jesus. Good night.